You're inside the press box. Christian FM Sports presents Inside the Press Box, where we discuss all sports from our favorite high school team to college and pro. Here's your hosts, Paul Tipton and Gary Paris.
Hey, Vero Nation. Welcome back. We had the week off last week, and, well, some of us did. GP still had to work his tail off with UCF in Memphis. Congratulations. Got you a nice win up there in the state of Tennessee.
It is. Always a tough place to play is in Memphis. And on the road like that is always, there's so many unknowns. And that was a good team. They're a worthy team. We beat them 35-28 and a good opponent.
You know, and I notice you're wearing a Seminole shirt.
Oh,
why?
You know what? Bobby must set this out for me to wear.
Yeah,
and I don't know why
she does that so often for you. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, you know what? Congratulations. Yeah, that was a nice
Paul.
That was a beat down.
I know. I've never rubbed it in.
No, you haven't.
Because in the past, you guys have beat us like that, and you were a gentleman about that too. So
it's one of those you just kind of go, all right, this season.
I didn't see 45-3 coming. I'll be honest.
Neither did I.
Neither did I see that coming.
I didn't think we would win the game.
I agree with you. I thought it would be like a 28-21 game.
Yeah, I figured Florida State was going to win that game. Yeah. Especially the way Miami is right now. They just seem to be in disarray right now, and so I think Mario Cristobal's just got to figure out how to get this ship righted, and it's probably not going to happen until we get into the off season. And so right now it's just a matter of, can you try to get bowl eligible? Maybe, but we'll talk more about, at some point we'll probably talk a lot more about college football. But right now, high school football is getting into that prime time season.
Second season of the year.
It is. And if you make it all the way to the state championship, you've played half a season because you've played 5 games. And it starts with round number 1, the quarterfinal of your region. And Vero Beach, we'll talk about how that whole bracket sets up. But, Gary, getting into the playoffs, there's a whole new format this year because of the fact that you had new classifications, district realignments a little bit. You also have, this power rankings, which we've had, all based around strength of schedule. But then there's this X factor, this secret sauce, as some people want to refer to, that only Max Preps knows about. And, and that determines your RPI or your power rankings, and everything is determined on your power rankings. And so, there was a little bit of trepidation about some of these teams, and, the district schedules were already taken care of. But this last week of high school football, there were some teams that were on the bubble. I'm thinking of like Centennial, Treasure Coast, teams that are around our area that were like fighting Port St. Lucie. Looking to get into the playoffs in their respective classes, and they did. They did what they had to do. Now, Port St. Lucie ended up losing to Centennial 59-0. I did not see that one coming either, but Port St. Lucie still able to get enough points to get in. They're going to play Jensen Beach on Friday night. But Martin County, Centennial, Treasure Coast, and Vero Beach, all representing one district, have made it into the bracket.
The only team was Central that did not make it in our district.
Yeah.
And again, the formula is not fair. The coaches cannot, they don't know that. Mm-hmm. So you have a bye week this week, okay? Vero does. You don't know who you're playing.
Right.
You can't even look at the formula and say, well, if this team wins, then we'll probably play this team because of the formula we know. And it's so messed up to our listeners out there, is that it goes on strength of schedule this year, strength of schedule from last year's opponents you're playing, and your opponents you're playing this year, and their opponents. And so it's a combination of, it's all put in on a computer, mm-hmm. and the computer spits out your strength of schedule, your RPI points, right. and all that. So, but again, it's such a, and there's one other little sauce in there that recipe has. They won't tell us.
Right. And so it makes it a little bit of frustration, not for coaches, for the media guys. We're all trying to figure it all out. I mean, and, And to be honest, I mean, to be just quite candid here, Gary, it almost to me lends itself to an integrity issue because, I'm not trying to, honest to God, I'm not trying to say that they're doing anything wrong. It's just when you have something unknown like that and you look at certain teams and their records and whatnot, and you kind of go, not sure I understand how a team, say, with a losing record but has a high strength of schedule, how do they make it in when you got other teams that have played well, have a winning record or 500 or above, and they didn't make it? It's amazing. It's a little strange.
It is, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't mind saying this. I think it's unfair that the Florida High School Athletic Association has turned it over to Max Preps to come up with this formula, and to allow them, and nothing against Max Preps, but not to let people know what is in the formula, so I can plan my future games around the formula if that's what you're going to adopt.
Yeah.
And if I'm and I'm not, and I have no, I'm just speaking for me personally, I would say that if I'm a head coach, I'd be in my athletic director's ear saying, we need to know how to plan for the future, how to plan games. We won 6 games and lost 3, and we didn't make the playoff.
Right.
And we were 6-4. We didn't make the playoff, but a team that's 3-6 made the playoff.
Right.
I mean, tell me how. Tell me what the formula is.
Right. And it almost says like, okay, we're going to reward you if you go out and play the hardest teams in the state. Doesn't matter if you win them or not. We're just going to reward you by letting you get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and again, in our district, Treasure Coast probably played one of the top 5 hardest schedules in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
And the reward was you got in with 3 wins.
Yeah.
And your opponents were the opponents you lost to. So, and I tell you what happened also that helped them. Vero Beach being a strength, losing to Vero Beach is a big win for them. Mm-hmm. And it's a district
which is a weird way to say it, but yeah.
It is. Yeah. Also Centennial making the playoff.
Yep.
And even though they beat Centennial, but making the playoff helped them in their strength of schedule too. They just had a ton of points out there. I thought they would slide back to 7th, and they stayed at 6th.
Yeah, but at least with the other teams that you mentioned, you can look at their record and go, well, at least they got a winning record.
Yes.
Yeah. And honest to God, there's other teams out there besides Treasure Coast. This isn't just about Treasure Coast.
We're just aware of Treasure Coast.
That's the one we're most familiar with right now. And so, look, hey, Coach Jones and his crew, hey, more power to you, buddy.
Oh, no, I'm not knocking. I'm not knocking Coach Jones.
It could come down to we see, if Vero Beach stays in long enough and Treasure Coast stays in long, we could see a rematch
in the 3rd round.
Yeah,
in the 3rd round.
Wow, what a game that could be.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Well, let me throw another one at you, Paul. All right, now you're Coach Jankowski. Mm-hmm. You've got an open date.
Yep.
All right, so where do you send you're probably going to be the number 1 seed. Probably. Mm-hmm. That's what you think. Yep. You're being led to believe you'll be number 1 seed in the region.
Which was true.
Yep. And then you're going to play the number 8 team in the region.
Correct.
Okay. Not knowing the formula, you've got to guesstimate, do your best analytic terms of trying to find all the lines cross this way and cross that way. Yep. That's who will play.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Algorithms, everything, whatever you need to do to find out your opponent.
What is the mathematical formula to try to figure that out?
How to get there.
And I get where you're going with this.
Maybe a crystal ball.
So, yeah. And Coach Jay, we talked about this and earlier in the week. And so he actually did. He wanted to go scout a game. Well, on Tuesday night, you had DeLand facing Spruce Creek for a district championship. Spruce Creek was right there. That was a bubble team. They really, in my opinion, they needed to win the district in order to make the playoffs. They did not win that game. But to the point, Gary's point here is, well, Coach Jay used that opportunity. Well, DeLand, we were pretty sure was going to make the playoffs. They did. We weren't sure about Spruce Creek, but if Spruce Creek made it in, they probably were going to be in that 8th seed. So let's go do a 2-for-1 here. I'm going to scout both teams. And he did. He went and watched that game. Okay, well, Spruce Creek ended up losing that game. They lost their next game. They didn't make it in. Harmony ends up making it in the 8th spot. And so, I won't say, oh, that was a wasted trip, but you were thinking probably, well, we're facing Spruce Creek, and you're not. Now you're facing Harmony, all because you're having to really guess on this whole format of who's going to be number 1 to number 8. So let me break it down for you and tell you who is actually 1 through 8. So Vero Beach took the top spot in our bracket. Now we are the 4S. That is our classification, which basically means 4. It's the Suburban League. We are in number 4, which is by our enrollment and geography, or I guess our county size is how that all comes together.
Yes, the county size has a lot to do with it.
Now, geographically, we are in what's called Region 3. So there's going to be 4 regions, a total of 32 teams. In our respective region, Vero Beach is number 1 in the bracket. Okay. Number 2 is Osceola. Number 3 is Martin County. Number 4 is Melbourne. 5 is Centennial. 6 is Treasure Coast. 7, DeLand. And then number 8 is Harmony. So how do they put the brackets together? One's going to play 8. So we will face Harmony on Friday night. Melbourne faces Centennial. That is the 4 and 5. Number 2 and number 7, that's Osceola, DeLand. And number 3 and number 6, Martin County and Treasure Coast. That right there, Gary, that's a game I kind of circle right there and kind of go, wow, district opponents playing each other in the very first round, which honestly, at one point, we were thinking there was a real possibility, depending on what Treasure Coast, how they would end up in the bracket. They could have been that 8 seed.
We were looking at whether we would be the 1 seed or 2 seed, depending on how they worked out.
Yep.
And they could slide either to 2 or 7 or 8, and we could match. And we were thinking, well, I hate to see that happen.
Yeah.
And but it didn't. So we don't have to worry about that. But you did a good job there breaking that down. and again, it's ironic that you in one region, not in 4M, there was Seminole has to travel. They're the number 1 seed.
So there is a little, now what Gary's talking about, there's a little clause in the whole process, if you will. So only for round 1, the quarterfinal of the region, okay, everything is determined off of the RPI or the power rankings. So as far as seeding 1 through 8 and all that, the higher seed always gets the home field advantage, except for round number 1. And here's the challenge on that. The difference, I should say, is that if there is a district champion that, say, is the 8th seed, and the number 1 seed is an at-large berth, meaning they didn't win their district, then the district would have the district champ would have home field advantage. And we've seen that in what Gary's talking about. There is another class, the 4M, where Seminole is the number 1 seed, but the 8th seed and Seminole was not the district champ. The 8th seed is the district champ. They get to host the first round of the playoffs.
Unbelievable.
It's a strange format. I get it. They're trying to figure out how to make everybody happy, and guess what? That's just never going to work.
It was really funny to comment by the coach from Seminole, and the name slipped my mind right now, but his comment was, hey, doesn't seem fair, but it is what it is, and we're going to have to travel to play that team. So I think they're going up to the Jacksonville area or someplace like that up there.
Well, and everything right now is kind of in limbo right now because we're watching a storm right now that could disrupt a lot of activities, and we don't know. So right now, as we're doing this recording, we don't know what the outcome's going to be in a few days because there's real potential that schools are going to close down, which means potentially no practicing. Do you want to just give the boys 1 or 2 days to get ready for a playoff game? I don't think that's a good idea.
There is a gap,
but there is
a chance.
Another chance.
The Florida High School Athletic Association, in their brilliant thinking, and they playoffs started this week. Okay, the second round next week. The third round would be on December 2nd.
Right.
And the fourth round would be on December 16th.
So there's a gap.
There's a gap, open date for everybody.
Yeah.
And thinking maybe weather. I have no idea why they did. It could have been any reason at all.
Yeah.
But because this potential hurricane, tropical storm hurricane, Nicole, comes across the state, and it takes out could cancel schools in a lot of regions, they may have to move round 1 to next week.
That's a real possibility.
Round 2, 3, and then not have that open date.
Yep.
But you do have that open date now.
Yeah. So that could change the whole landscape of everything as far as what do you do between now and, whenever the next game's going to be played. That'll be something that they'll have to figure out. Gary, let me just kind of run down real quick here for the overall rankings of the 4S class. Bartram Trail is number 1. Lakeland is number 2. Niceville is number 3. Vero Beach comes in at number 4. Venice at number 5. There's your top 5. Why is that important? Because and this is a big if Vero Beach is fortunate enough to get to the 4th round of the playoffs, which is the state semifinals, they'll basically kind of go back to the board here and go, okay, who are the highest ranking teams left in the playoffs? And whoever is the highest ranking, that will be the number 1 seed, then the number 2, number 3, number 4. So then, very much like how the playoff bracket started, 1 will play 4, 2 will play 3. And so 1 and 2 basically get to be the host in that state semifinal game. Now, a lot of things would have to go right if Vero Beach was going to get an opportunity to host a game, because right now, being at that 5th spot, in the 4th spot, there's a real good chance Bartram Trail probably wins out, and more than likely, that's probably who we would face, I think, in the 4th round.
They do have a challenge in Niceville.
They do. They're ranked number 3.
That's a good team, Niceville.
Correct.
Yeah, and again, as Paul's saying, normally the formula goes 1, 4, 2, 3.
Right.
Well, if Niceville wins out, say they win that, then all of a sudden they become 1.
Right. And they would be number 1.
And number 2.
Well, no, actually, Lakeland would be number 1.
Yeah, because you're right.
Lakeland number 1, Niceville 2. Vero would be 3. Potentially Venice in that 4th spot.
Yeah.
If all that plays out. You just don't know.
So we don't know.
We don't know, but, it's kind of fun to think through, potentials here.
But we do know 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3.
Right.
And it's based on your points they give you on the secret sauce.
Whether we're the 3rd spot or the 4th spot, we really we're not an opportunity to host a game.
We're going to travel.
Yeah.
Vero cannot host.
Right.
I don't believe there's a way with the formula right now they could host the semifinals.
Yeah, it's a very, very,
unless there's major upsets down there.
Right. And talking to some guys that are a lot more knowledgeable than us about some of these other teams and whatnot, the feeling is that they feel pretty confident that it'll probably come down between Bartram Trail and Niceville in that one bracket. Lakeland feel pretty strong that Lakeland's going to take that particular region number 2. And then when it comes to region 4, where Venice is the number 1 seed, there's still a pretty good feel that Venice will probably take that one. And so, that's just where it will land. But you know what? It starts with game number 1, and you got to win game number 1 if you hope to get to game number 4.
Absolutely. That's everybody says, well, Vero has a hard time getting past game number 3. Hey, to play in game number 3 means you won 2 games in front of you.
Yep.
And when you get to game number 3, there's 8 teams in the state of Florida. You're talking about 8 teams, and you're talking about some really good football programs around the state.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, is to get to that 3rd round. You win the 3rd round, you're in the Final 4, and that makes you a semifinalist type team.
And again, I want to circle back to the fact that we've got 4 teams from our district that represent our region.
Out of 8.
That's an impressive figure right there.
Well, Lenny said it during your shows when you and Matt do it on Thursday and Coach's Corner on Tuesdays, and it'll be interesting tomorrow on Coach's Corner or this Tuesday to have what Lenny has to say about all this, and we may know more about the this week's scheduling and
exactly.
practices and all about that.
Right.
But he always says that he was commenting to us about everybody in this district. He said before, we have a tough district.
Mm-hmm.
We have a tough category as a region.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, then you get to the rest of the 4 S's in the state of Florida. There are no cupcakes.
No.
There are no cupcakes. Venice won the whole state championship.
Yep.
Last year.
Lakeland, who was in a different class, now they're up in this respective class now is 4S. I mean, they're consistently vying for a state title.
Absolutely.
And then you got Bartram Trail.
They won a state championship a couple years ago.
They did. So, I mean, you got some tough teams in there. And, I think there was some feelings, back in the spring to summertime that when the reclassification came out that, oh, man, well, we don't have to play these teams anymore, so that makes it easier for teams like Vero Beach. No, it really didn't.
No.
It really didn't.
We didn't put a pathway straight to the championships by being in this 4S.
Mm-hmm.
We missed the Palm Beach teams because we had a good success over Palm Beach teams.
Yep.
We had a good success over teams in our area.
Yep.
It was when you got to the bigger city teams that you would see that you were with open enrollment and everything. You saw the talent those teams had, and that's why Miami, Orlando, Apopka, all those schools over in that area that Seminole, who won it a couple years ago, they're in that metro now, along with the city of Duval County, Jacksonville,
right,
and the Pinellas and Hillsborough County, and then you got South Florida.
So, there you go. So, bottom line is Vero Beach, round 1, faces Harmony. Now, what do we know about Harmony? Well, Harmony, they're kind of like almost out in no man's land, Gary, where the school is located. I mean, it's its own little community, and, they played some decent football. They did what they had to do. They got enough points that got them inside the playoffs. Now, they got a tough task ahead of them, but you know what? Hey, they're probably feeling really good about the fact that, 2 weeks ago they were out on the outside looking in. Now they're in the playoffs.
They're a high school that's located between Kissimmee, St. Cloud, and Vieira, Melbourne. They're stuck right in the middle. Matter of fact, the district they played in was out of Palm Bay district and Melbourne district over there.
Right.
That was their district to play in, even though they're in Osceola County. They're like right at the county borderline on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But they played in the district from in South Brevard.
Yeah, so again, they've had their own opportunities. They've tried to do everything they can to get into the playoffs. They did
6-4. I mean,
6-4. It's not a record to scoff at all. I think they've played some quality teams. They played their district schedule, not the best. They were 1-2 in the district. But they're coming off a win over St. Cloud, 44-0. So
it's their losses that got them into this playoff position.
Yeah, and again, that's just such a weird way to say it.
Yeah,
you win by losing.
Win by losing.
Their losses were to O'Galley. They lost to them 28-13. They lost to Haggerty 24-3. They lost to Melbourne 9-7. They lost to Heritage 35-3, and so that's your 4 losses on the season.
Yeah, and they had enough character in those teams to get them points, especially Melbourne being the district champ.
So I guarantee you, what'll be really interesting is to hear Coach Jay's take after he's had time to watch film and see what the Longhorns are all about, and see what Vero Beach is going to do to get prepared for them. So. The biggest thing right now is trying to figure out, are we actually going to play a game this week because you got this storm looming out there?
And be honest with you, we found out we were playing Harmony. Now, we're taping this Monday morning. We found out about noon yesterday. Now, it's hard to prepare. And what Paul's trying to say is that, we don't have enough information right now until we got to get in and start digging, looking at film, and coming up with an analysis for this game. Do I think we can win? Yes, I do. I think we have a strong defense. I think our offense it can run the ball. We throw the ball. Doesn't matter who our quarterback is. We throw the ball well, and coach comes up with a fine game plan for our opponent. I mean, if we can beat Treasure Coast with a backup quarterback, then we can beat other teams with Jake Whiteley, our quarterback, who's done just an admirable job when he's filling in and doing that for Tyler Aronson.
Yeah. Just a quick look at Harmony, Gary. I'm just pulling up their stats right now. Not a lot of passing yards. In fact, they're under 300 yards on the season for passing. Now, some of this may be they haven't updated their stats because I'm looking at some of the games played and it doesn't show full 10 games. So that's probably part of it. But they definitely like the ground game. 882 yards on the ground combined with between, I think, quarterback and running back. So, yeah, they've got one kid that's rushed for 500 yards.
Hey, they may probably be a single wing team. We've seen enough of that lately.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing, Gary. It's like, you talked about, with not knowing who you're going to play. It's like, how do you prepare? Well, at this point, we've pretty much seen about every offense possibly out there right now, and our defense has played well against it.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk because that's very similar to what Treasure Coast runs. They run it verbatim, boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Wellington mixes it up.
Mm-hmm.
They came in and they would run a series of wing tee.
Yep.
Then they would come back and do a spread,
yep.
a series of a spread.
Yeah.
And then they would come back and play conventional football
yep.
with the tight end in the ball game and two wide receivers. So you never knew what combination.
Martin County ran us, and they didn't run necessarily a single wing, but it was kind of a form of it that they ran against us. So, that definitely, I think that really helped us for Treasure Coast.
Yes, it did. I was just going to say, that was very close to what Treasure Coast
mm-hmm.
runs. Very close.
Yeah.
It doesn't have all the shifting and all the the reverses and everything, but it gave us a good opportunity to see what we did for Treasure Coast. And losing to Martin County, it hurt and stung because I don't think we anticipated that game, and we may have overlooked Martin County thinking about Treasure Coast. And they came out and they punched us right smack in the mouth right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And turnovers were created, and next thing you know, we're behind, and we lost that game. But it prepared us to play Treasure Coast into a heck of a ball game. It
sure did. So now we get ready for Harmony. Again, stay connected to us as much as you can. We'll try to make sure to keep you updated on game time situations as far as, like, is it going to be played Friday? Will it get moved to Saturday? Will it be moved a week? We'll try to do our best to keep you updated on that information as it's given to us. And so that's just what we try to do for you. Check our website and also check social media. Facebook page, Twitter. We'll try to make sure that we keep you updated with that. And, try to do everything we can to make sure that you are aware of what's going on so that you can be prepared and show up for Friday night when the game time is actually going to be played. So we're looking forward to it. Round 1 against Harmony is coming up very soon. Look forward to seeing you there as well. As always, go Indians.
Thanks for joining us inside the press box. For more, go to ChristianFM.com.